Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Aaron Advantage podcast. As I've been doing lately, I am interviewing another agent at another point in their career. Today, joining me after his first full calendar year completed with FC Tucker Emge Realtors is my good buddy, Gino Delacoma.
How's it going?
Not too bad, Gino. How you doing today, man?
Good, man. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Honestly, it's been fun for me. I've had different people at different points in their career. Obviously, I have my sister on who just got started. I've had Will Ritter, who's kind of coming back to the States after being out of the country for a year, who's been in the business for a while. And now I've got a guy who, quite frankly, is crushing his early career in real estate. So I'm real excited to talk to you about a bunch of different things. I got some notes here on questions I want to ask. But before we dive into it too deep, why don't you tell us a little bit about the fact that I've got you down here as you got licensed in July of 2020.
That's correct, yeah.
So you hopped into the industry when it was one of the craziest markets I've ever seen in my 15-year career.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about kind of like your backstory of how you got into real estate and your thoughts of the last 18 months of this craziness you've been living.
You know, I'd always kind of thought about it. I've got a background in sales, restaurant, management, kind of running business, things of that nature. And, obviously with the COVID pandemic, things kind of came to a screeching halt in April with my tenure there, unfortunately. So some of us were displaced, and I just kind of sat back and thought about what I wanted to do, and I was at an age and a time in my life where I'd been through the resume. I'd been through the interviews, I'd been through that, time frame, and I just told myself, I think there's more that I can do. I felt that I could get my name out there and get into real estate. And the more I thought about it, and talked with the wife and the family and that kind of stuff, and just reached out to FC Tucker, of course. Knowing the people there. I've got a lot of guys that I went to school with, former agent of mine who'd sold my homes, and it was great. Right. And I really just kind of took the approach of, okay, I've got some time here to kind of figure out what I want to do. And I really just asked a lot of questions. Right. And it took me a couple months to really think about if this was right for me. In the back of my mind, I always felt like it was. So I think that kind of overlaps to what I've been able to do the last, year and a half. Right. So I think really it's just thinking about it and getting as much information as I could. And I was really surprised at what the market was at that time. As we all were. I was expecting a totally different answer than what I got. And I thought, okay, and I got some really good advice about, being from here. I grew up here, went to high school here. I had worked at other jobs where I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people and get a lot of connections. Right. And it was said to me that, you'd be silly not to do this. That's a really good point. That you really hit on. I got good connections. I'm from here and everything. What people don't realize, I've found when they're thinking about getting into real estate, is how important the relationships are, and the fact that you already had them, and the ability to communicate with those people easily probably is what helped lead to some of the success that you've had. Would you say that's accurate? Absolutely. The old phrase is not what you know, it's who you know. Right. Yeah. And I think things I'd done in the past and people trusted me. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it too is when you're new, people know that. Right. Right. And they say, okay, I'd worked with somebody 10, 15 years ago, whatever, but man, I've known Gino, I've known this guy for so long, and he's never, steered me wrong, or, whatever it may be. And it's like, let's give him a shot, nice. And then it's just, you just build it from there. Excellent. Yeah. So, I want to dive into, I want to get a little bit past some of the questions I've asked some of the newer people. Obviously, we've talked about the fact that you're with FC Tucker. You've been through the fast track program, the amazing training of the stuff, that the real estate course didn't teach you. Right. I want to get into the real world education you got here a little bit. The fact of, how do I do the transactions and get into this? Yeah. Most people, when they first get into real estate, it's much more common for them to be a buyer's agent than a seller's agent, just because that's a little bit easier to get your feet wet a little bit. Sure. And you decided to hop into this industry with probably the most competitive market I've ever seen for buyer's agents. Right. And you said something to me that kind of blew my mind, but I want to ask you, like, when you first started getting out there and you started working with buyers and showing them houses and realizing, holy crap, I'm one of 7, 10, 15 offers on these properties. What was going through your mind? A lot of things. But at the same, you got to take a step back and say, okay, what is it going to take for my client to win?
Right.
And
it's always money, right?
For the most part, let's say 90% of it. But the fast track and talking with people at Tucker, leaning on the people that are there, and the really good thing about Tucker is the training and the conversations adapt to the market.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not just saying, here's what you should always do. Here's what you should always do. It's, okay, the market's doing this. How do we react? How do we help our clients?
Right.
So that really kind of started to sink in. And a lot of it is just, what place is your client in? Right. Are they just shopping, or are they, do they have a lease? When's it up? Do you have to move now? Do you have another alternative in case you don't get this property? So a lot of it just, you got to sit down with your client and get all that information up front. Now, sometimes you'll get somebody that says, hey, I want to go see this today. They write an offer. Okay, right. Great. But that's not going to happen, majority of the time. So really it's just kind of soaking everything in and being a sponge and learning as much as possible.
I'm picking a theme up here from you, Gino. It's asking questions. It's being inquisitive.
Yes.
It's listening. That is the hallmark of what I find in most successful agents.
Yeah.
And that's something that it seems that you realized right away that you needed to be able to do and be doing. And it's obviously worked, because, I'm looking at your numbers here. Over 3.8 million in closed sales in 2021.
Yeah.
Executive club producer for FC Tucker in your first full calendar year. That doesn't happen by accident.
I guess not. At first I was like, executive club, what's that? I've been blessed. I've been fortunate. I've worked with some really good clients, and I think it is a two-way street, right? But at the same time, they're seeking a profession. Mm-hmm. They're coming to you for a reason. Most people think, I could just go buy a house. I could do everything on my own. Don't realize kind of what it takes to get from, let's say, an accepted offer to the closing table.
Right.
Who's going to know the forms and the processes and the times and the dates and kind of what's next steps. But I really kind of learned over the last, let's say, 6 months to a year is the more you prep up front and the more you have the conversations with your clients. So there's no surprises.
Right.
You give them a timeline or a time frame or something of them to revert back to say, okay, hey, yes, Gino talked about this. There's X amount of days to do this. This can come up. We've budgeted for this. Let's say if we're listing or selling, and we've budgeted X amount of dollars for repairs. We know what to expect, right? Yeah. We know what to expect from an inspection. And I think a lot of clients don't realize a lot of that stuff that goes into the home buying process or selling process.
Yeah, so that was something, I can't remember what the infographic is or anything else, but I read somewhere that every time an agent gets an offer under a contract, whether it's buying side, selling side, there's about 180 steps that you take for every transaction once it's under contract. So people think, hey, you get an accepted offer, deal's done, this is easy. And that's the start of the hard work.
Right.
So you said something that stood out to me specifically, which is that you have those conversations on the front end when you're working with clients on what to expect, how things are going to go.
Right.
How about those hard conversations that you've had to have? Where you're working with buyers where you have to call them and say, hey, buddy, I know we did everything we could. We went as hard as we could on the price, and you didn't get the house. Yeah,
I've had a few of those. And I kind of learned over a course of them is to have, that what's the point of what's the phrase, no return on an offer, or what's the dollar of no regret. Right.
Yes.
But sometimes you can be wrong, right? And a lot of it, it's just kind of understanding their situation and saying, look, we didn't get this one, but don't get discouraged, right? There's going to be more out there. A lot of people I've had have missed, but the one they found, they've completely forgot about the one before that.
Right.
It's like it never existed. I've had a few like, man, I can't believe we missed out on that one. But then the next one, they're like, this is perfect.
Exactly.
And you learn from those experiences, and every conversation's kind of the same because it's the same dialogue. Hey, we didn't get it, but there's different reasons why we didn't get it.
Right.
So what can we do better next time to get it?
Would you say you had a high percentage of your sales where you had to have those hard conversations, or would you say you were pretty successful getting deals accepted?
I think, to be honest with you, I think I've had maybe 2 or 3 offers that we didn't get.
2 or 3 offers.
2 or 3. Yeah, believe it or not.
Dude, that is not only is that impressive, it's incredible. I had 2 offers I wrote last week that didn't get accepted because of multiple offers. Your batting average is amazing.
That's pretty good. I'm off to a hot start. But I think a lot of there's so many factors that go into that, and they think about what somebody can afford and what's their budget. And maybe you found something that is X dollars less that they got a buffer and then they can come in strong. Or, what's the possession look like? How can we help? Or, there's so many moving parts and so many dynamics now, but I'm humble, right? I understand that that's not going to be the case all the time.
Yeah.
And if you know that and understand that, it's a little bit, it's easier to take when it doesn't happen.
Right. And, the fact that you're taking the time to ask those questions of, hey, we didn't get this one.
Right.
What was it that the seller decided was better? If it's price, it's price. Sometimes we can't do anything about that. But that possession, those other variables, taking the time to learn what's most important to the seller and try to tailor your offer with your clients to make that happen.
Right.
That's one of those things that I think is leading to some of that success that you've been seeing. So that's fantastic. So let's switch off of buyers for a second. Let's talk about listings because, I'm the kind of guy that I'm very impressed and always kind of cheerleading the other agents at Tucker when they're doing really well. And I have been pumped to see the success that you've had, not only as a buyer's agent, but also with the listings that you've been able to get. And I think you've done a great job with that.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the fact that you're coming in and you're able to get listings in this ridiculously competitive market where the inventory is so low and you've got people who are like, I need to make sure that I got somebody who can take care of me. How's that been for you?
It's been pretty good. I've had, at first I was a little, being new and you get that phone call and you're like, I'm the only one they've called. Right. So you're thinking, oh, I got this. You still do your processes and everything, but in the back of your mind, you're just waiting for them to say, okay, where do I sign? And then maybe a couple times you're like, well, we're talking to another agent. And you're like, oh. So
it's like a gut punch.
Yeah. Then now so moving forward, it's like, okay, right. I mean, it could be my neighbor, it could be my best friend, it could be a relative, right? I'm still going to approach it as I'm competing.
Right.
And I'm going to take anything and everything I have. I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to do my homework on the property. I'm going to look at everything, look at the comps and make sure I go with a really good plan. But most importantly is the plan of telling the client how we're going to get it sold, right? Anybody can stick a sign in the yard. Anybody can come take pictures. Anybody can put it in the MLS and say, hey, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Call today, but there's a lot of things that we can do, especially with Tucker, with, marketing and AdWorks and stuff like that, really go a long way with the client saying, okay, this guy's going to sell my house. Right. Do we want to list it or do we want to sell it? Yep. And to sell it means we want to maximize. We want to get the most bang for your buck. We want to get the top dollar and have everything align with what the seller wants. I really kind of go back to my sales experience, with Coca-Cola as my previous employer. And I did a lot of convenience retail business and I sold contracts. Right. So it was advocating for space versus Pepsi, right? Competition. Advocating space versus another competitor, whoever it may be, talking pricing, talking dollars, percentages. Why should I have more space than the other person? So that kind of gets me in that mode of, okay, I'm here to sell. I'm here to present myself. Right. Not necessarily, yes, I want to sell your house, but I want to sell me. What can I do for that, for that client? And I think that's really kind of helped me, understand if I'm sitting on the other side of the table, what am I hearing? Right. Now I want to touch on that a little bit because you've got some prior sales skills and things there, and I talk to people all the time about the fact that, real estate is sales to some degree, but it's more service than anything else. Yes. But what I hear you saying is kind of selling that service, which is what you did with Coke. Right. Hey, this is why our product is better, not just because of this, but it's going to be better for you. Yep. And so you're bringing that experience and saying, hey, this is why I'm better for you, and utilizing those kind of dialogues and that information. Do you think that you think that's been something that's helped you with your competitive process? Yes. Sales, it's all about, your dialogue in your approach, right? Getting the people to understand what you're saying and how it relates to them. Anybody can have a sales pitch, right? It's, you don't want to, over perform, or excuse me, what's the
Overpromise and underdeliver?
Yes, yeah, overpromise and underdeliver. So I'm always kind of thinking that, but being able just to sell the truth, right, and be honest and upfront, but also still listen. There's going to be objectives, right? Everybody thinks their house is more than what it should be or can be, but it's also making suggestions. Hey, yeah, we could probably get to that, but here's what you're going to have to do to get there.
Right.
But it's just a conversation. It's a great dialogue. It's listening, but to go back to your point, is selling the language per se, right?
Right. And I think the fact that you said it multiple times, and I don't even know if you catch on this, and this is a thing that I kind of preach all the time since I'm a Buffini guy myself, is it's a dialogue that you're having and not a script that you're trying to memorize. Because every situation is going to be a bit different. And without listening and having that two-way street, like you said, it's a completely different mindset going into it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's get into the part of the program where I get to shower some praise on you and talk about the accolades and the wonderful things you've been doing. Let's talk about Rookie of the Year for units for FC Tucker Emge.
Sure.
Man, how in the world did you come in and blow it out of the water the way you did? I mean, you've had a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
What are some of the tips, the tricks, tactics you have as a new guy coming in to keep track of all the amazing things you're doing?
Yeah, I started getting into the Buffini. I got to give him credit, using a database.
Speaking of the Buffini, did you get the email I sent you today?
Yes, I did. I need some more transactions.
You know what helps with that?
Yeah, that's true. Good point. You got to be disciplined. You got to have a database, right? Who's your core? Who's your clients? Your A's, B's, and C's per se. How anybody can decipher how they want to do it. But going back to what was the question again?
Like how do you keep track of all the things you're doing? Like what's your process of?
Right.
So many people get into this business and they're order takers, they're reactionary. They don't have a plan at all.
Right. With that system, I have a database. Then you can plug and play. Prospective clients. You can have active and pending, and keep track of all your numbers. But also kind of look at, what's converted, what's not converted, who you met with, who you didn't meet with, what reasons why, and implementing that and how you're going to stay in touch with somebody.
Right.
So I kind of use the Buffini software system, some of the other things that we use internally with Tucker, which, Sierra database, things like that we can use. But anything that I've gone outside of what is given to us, I use Buffini.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. You're able to come in and be successful because you actually put a plan in place and follow it.
Right.
You think it's common sense?
Yeah. I think I'm not young, I'm not old, right? But I think you learn so much, and at my age, it's kind of like, okay, I've managed business before, P&Ls, profits. That it's like you have to have something, right? Otherwise, you're going to get lost. And you're not going to know what you're doing. So I think a lot of it was just, to me, is like, okay, this is my business now. Right. I work for me. And just like anything you do, you have to have a budget. You have to know what you're spending on. Is it working? Is it not? I mean, there's so many factors that come into play, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this is for my benefit. Right. If you won't know if it works if you don't try it.
That's right. Well, I got a question for you, and this is one that I think I haven't asked enough people, but if you could point to one thing, just one thing that you did in the last 18 months that you were like, this is the number one thing that I can attribute some success to, or this is the number one thing that I have to do.
Yeah.
What do you think that one thing would be, or what is that one thing you did?
Yeah. You have to have a plan. We talked about you have to, you have to be disciplined. You have to learn. You have to read. You have to, I try to absorb a lot of stuff from the office. Just talking with other agents. I've got a lady that sits next to me that's been doing this 20, 25 years. And I ask a ton of questions. Hey, what would you do on this? Or what do you think about this? Or listen to some conversations she's having. It's the easiest way to learn is to be involved in conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's a little bit contrary to what people think about real estate.
Sure.
We've got this kind of rumor that goes around about how our industry is so cutthroat and everybody's out to get you and all this stuff. One of the things I love about Tucker is the fact that we have such a culture and a community of sharing where everybody's willing to give that kind of advice.
Yes. Place that celebrates the wins, right? We're all in it for the same reason. But I think with Tucker, it's more about everybody selling for the tea, for the brand, right? Per se, it's not about individualism at all. Now we celebrate individual awards, but it's for a reason. But at the same time, I mean, it's just you got a wealth of knowledge in that room, and it's free, right? I mean, I can come see you, or I can go talk to anybody at any time and ask a question. Now, you may ask 10 agents the same question, and you may get 10 different answers,
right?
But they're going to lead. They're all going to be kind of geared in the same path. But I think for me, it's just trying to absorb as much as I can. Listen to podcasts, right? Buffini podcasts or books. Just try to dabble in some books and just listen to scenarios or read scenarios on things. But yeah, you can gain a lot. So what my thing is go somewhere where you're going to get. What's the word? You're gonna get. Tucker, the resource. Tucker's gonna provide you.
Get the resources and the tools and things.
Yes, right. That somebody's gonna be there for you. Right. It's not okay. You've got your license. Here's your desk. Here's your phone. Start calling. Right. It's how do we get you to where you need to be? Right. Putting a plan together, a business plan. Tucker's really good with that and really challenging you to say, okay, what'd you do last year? What's your goal for the following year? Well, what worked, what didn't? How are you going to change? What are you going to do on a daily basis? What's your plan look like? And it's individualized, but at the same time, it's getting you kind of understand that, you have to have a plan.
Right. Especially, we can ask you now, hey, what'd you do last year? What worked? What didn't work? But when you're first getting started,
you don't know.
You have no idea. It's like, okay, so who else has done this? What did they do that worked?
Yes,
and what didn't work?
Good point. Yeah. And being new, it's just about getting out and meeting people, whether it's a lunch with a lender or whoever it may be, getting your contacts. And just start letting people know you're in the business.
I'll take it a step farther. That's not just being new. I tell, when I'm talking to agents, I've been doing this 15 years, and I tell people if I'm not growing, I'm dying. And I'm in a position where I'm in the same boat as you, Gino. I'm listening to podcasts, reading books, doing what I can to get that education and meeting people all the time because it's a relationship business.
Yes. And kind of going back to building is to say my goal is, who I've worked with in the past year and a half or so is how do I get them to refer me? Right. And I think, people want to spend a ton of money up front, and then try to do everything they can for leads and stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong. Everybody's got their own systems, but, referral is the easiest way. I did not say easiest, but it's the cheapest way, right? if I sell your house, and I do a really good job, and then I'll say, you're at church and somebody's like, man, we're thinking about selling your house. You're like, hey,
Gino was amazing.
I just worked with this guy, and next thing you know, you get a phone call, and it builds from there. And I think early on it was like, okay, my mindset was like, who can I reach out to that would want to sell or buy? Instead of thinking, okay, who can I reach out to that will refer me?
Right.
That I'm in the business. Hey, you need to call this guy. Right. Instead of almost going after people like, are you ready to sell? You ready to,
And that's the thing that scares a lot of agents because they're like, well, I don't know anybody who's ready to sell their house right now.
Sure.
That's fine. But
somebody else
everybody knows probably 100 other people. So they may know somebody. And the fact that you're, so quick to jump on, okay, who do I know that can just refer me?
Right.
Who do I know that understands that I'm actually here to help people and do a good job for them? I think that's a huge, huge step forward that takes a lot of people a lot of years to figure out sometimes.
Right.
So
that's true.
Now, Gino, what would you say is the most surprising thing that you've found in your real estate career so far? And whatever it is today, it's gonna change.
Yeah. Honestly, there's people. There's a need for our services.
Yes.
Right. Just like there's needs for attorneys. There's need for mechanics. It's a profession, right? It's we've licensed. We go to class. We do all the things to get certified by the state or whatever it may be. But there's people out there that generally don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I want to buy a house. What do I do? So I think that's kind of one of the biggest things is there's people out there that don't know.
Right. So the fact that you're an educator is probably more surprising than you thought.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I tell people that all the time. You know, I came up with a team mission for my sales team, which is to educate the consumer on the process of buying or selling a home, to take the stress out of the sale when it's time to make a move. And I've almost kind of even expanded that out to my mission is really to educate other agents as well on ways that you can better educate your consumer, because ultimately if the agent's more educated, the consumer will be more educated. And then if you've got everybody who knows what's going on, it makes things move a little smoother.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't have to have some of those awkward conversations about, well, why didn't this happen? You didn't tell me about that. Yeah. I kind of go back to the purchasing pathway with Buffini. Right. It was a big one. Here's the steps. Here's what we're going to do. Buyer counseling sessions. Hey, let's come in first. Right. Their first step is they just throw you a bunch of houses and say, let's go.
Right.
Which is fine, but it's like, are you pre-approved? Kind of let's talk about some stuff first. What can you afford? Right.
Yeah.
Let's not look at houses.
And pre-approved versus what you afford are not necessarily
that's true.
the same thing.
It's two different conversations. Right. So I think I think you'll find the really good agents out there, the ones that have been doing it for a long time, can do that. Mm-hmm. That they've been able to sustain what they're doing because they build really good relationships.
Right.
And they have people that refer. Right. So, agents, John Briscoe that I had used in the past was great because here's what I wanted. Here's what he did. It was seamless. And I'm thinking back, it's like, I don't be like that guy. Right. Yeah. But you're going to find that the good agents, that's what they do.
Right.
They build a good business based off of what they've done and how they treat their clients.
100%.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Yep.
Well, Gino, I've gone through all the questions that I have here for you. Anything specific that you want to share? Anything that you think might be beneficial to somebody who's thinking about getting into real estate or anything like that?
I think a lot of it is what's your approach going to be? Is this something you want to do full time, or is it just a part time? There's a lot of part time people out there that just do it because they like it. If you're going to be committed, commit. Right. Obviously, I would say talk to Tucker. Right. But interview. Go talk to people, talk to other agents. How's the market? Get as much information as you can and learn a little bit about it before you just kind of jump into it. Mm-hmm. Look at the upfront expenses. What's it going to cost me? What am I going to need to sustain my business? What are the monthly fees or, kind of those similar, looking at those things. Real estate's different, right? It's not for everybody.
Right.
But, I think it's something that, it's very challenging, right? But it's super rewarding.
Yeah.
And to look at it and say, okay, I'm finding people their home. But more or less just try to get as much information as you can before you just kind of get your feet wet.
It's not something to just jump into on a whim.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, Gino, thanks again so much for coming in. I appreciate this. I'm going to listen to this myself many, many times because you dropped some knowledge bombs in there for things. So thanks again for coming in. Yeah. Always willing to have you back anytime you want to be a guest, any topics you want to tell us about. Quick shout out to Mr. Gino. He is the reason why the Aaron Advantage Reacts videos are in existence. So I'm going to have to do some more of those. So Gino, thanks for coming in, buddy. I hope you have a great day.
Absolutely.
And try to stay warm out there.
Yes, you too, man. Thanks. All right, bud.
Hey, this is Aaron Luttrull. Thank you so much for checking out the Aaron Advantage podcast. If you would like to be a guest, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. We're always looking for other people to interview.